Welcome back, everybody. We're going to do a deep dive today on a case that's it's pretty wild, and it kind of spans the legal world and the entertainment world.
Yeah, this one's got it all right.
It really does. We're talking about Sunny Hostin from The View.
Right.
And a lawsuit that has her husband, Dr. Emanuel Hostin, caught up in one of the largest RCO cases ever filed in New York State.
Yeah, it's and when you say ICO, this is something that really caught my attention because, this case is even bigger than some of the mafia cases that we've seen prosecuted, over the years in New York City.
It's true, and you don't often see the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act used in a healthcare fraud case.
Right. It's usually, reserved for, organized crime.
Right.
And really, patterns of activity, right, that are egregious.
Exactly. And to give you an idea of the scope here, we're talking about 180 defendants.
Wow.
Including doctors, medical practices, and hospitals, all accused of being part of this complex web of kickbacks and unnecessary surgeries.
So, before we get into the specifics of this case, I think it might be helpful for our listener to kind of get a little bit of background on RICO,
Yeah, absolutely.
What exactly is it?
So RICO lets prosecutors target entire criminal enterprises, not just individual actors.
Right.
And it focuses on patterns of racketeering activity.
Got it.
Which can include things like bribery, extortion, fraud, money laundering.
So in this case, what they're saying is this group of doctors and medical institutions, they were operating like a criminal organization.
Exactly.
To make money, essentially.
Yeah, and at the center of these accusations is Dr. Hostin. He's an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And he's accused of performing a lot of these unnecessary arthroscopic surgeries, particularly on patients who had been in car accidents.
Now, arthroscopic surgery is a real thing.
Yeah.
It is a beneficial procedure.
Right.
I mean, it's minimally invasive.
Exactly.
They go in with a tiny camera and can fix all sorts of things in there.
Right. But the lawsuit is saying that these surgeries were being performed without proper medical justification.
Oh, wow.
That it was motivated by profit rather than the well-being of the patient.
And just to clarify, they're also saying that insurance companies were being billed for these surgeries, right?
Oh, yeah.
Potentially.
Absolutely.
For surgeries, that never even happened.
Yeah. The lawsuit actually uses this really kind of, I think, powerful analogy of paying for a steak and getting tofu instead.
Wow.
So it's like these patients are being deceived. They're getting unnecessary and possibly harmful surgeries.
Right.
And the insurance companies are fitting the bill.
Yeah. That analogy really does paint a picture, doesn't it?
It does.
Of really what could be going on here. And, it just makes you think about, who can we trust?
Absolutely.
And how does the system work? And,
Right. And that kind of leads us to another layer of this case, which is fascinating in itself, and that's New York's no-fault insurance law.
Right. This no-fault law that was designed to help people
right.
could actually be contributing to this whole mess.
Well, that's what the lawsuit suggests, yeah.
Yeah.
So how does a law that's meant to help people end up potentially tangled up in a massive fraud case?
Right.
A good question.
We need to understand how no-fault works.
Okay, so break it down for us. How does New York's no-fault law function?
So essentially, if you're hurt in a car accident in New York, your own insurance company covers your medical expenses and some other losses, no matter who caused the accident.
Okay.
And this speeds up the process of getting you the care that you need.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for all the, legal stuff to get worked out.
Right, that makes sense.
Right, in theory.
Yeah.
But the lawsuit argues that this system, where the insurance companies have to pay no matter what, may have led to a less rigorous claims review process.
So because insurance companies are required to pay out no matter what, they may not be looking at the claims as closely as they would in a fault-based system.
Potentially not.
Oh.
And this is the context where this alleged scheme involving Dr. Hostin was able to thrive.
So they're saying that this no-fault system, while it was designed with good intentions, might have created this loophole that made it easier to submit fraudulent claims without anybody noticing.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even laws with good intentions can have,
unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, unintended consequences.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the plaintiff in this case.
Okay.
American Transit Insurance Company, or ATCT.
Right. They're the ones who filed this massive RICO suit.
They're claiming they were defrauded out of millions of dollars.
bold move, taking on such a large group of defendants.
It is. And it's important to remember that this is just one side of the story.
Right. We need to hear from Dr. Hostin's legal team.
Exactly. And we'll do that as we continue our deep dive.
So what does Dr. Hostin's side of this story sound like?
Well, his lawyer is calling this lawsuit completely meritless and is accusing ATC-CT of basically trying to use this lawsuit to cover up their own financial problems.
So they're saying that ATCT is the one in trouble here.
Right.
And they're just trying to point the finger at Dr. Hostin to distract from their own issues.
That's what they're saying.
Interesting.
Yeah, and, they're going even further than that. They're trying to make Dr. Hostin look like the victim here.
Okay.
Painting this picture of him as being stuck in a system where insurance companies have all this power.
Right.
And can pressure doctors into making decisions that maybe aren't in the best interests of their patients.
Yeah, because if the doctor doesn't do what the insurance company wants, then they might not get paid.
Exactly.
So it's like they're saying Dr. Hostin had to choose between doing what he thought was right for his patients and making sure he could keep his practice running.
It's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, it really highlights those sometimes conflicting interests, between doctors and insurance companies and the patients caught in the middle.
Right, for sure. And speaking of bringing new perspectives to the story, we can't ignore the fact that Joe Rogan weighed in on all of this.
Oh, yeah. He had some things to say about this on his podcast, didn't he?
He did. He was pretty critical of Sonny Hostin and The View, accusing them of hypocrisy.
For not speaking out about the lawsuit.
Right. Pointing to Sonny Hostin's past comments on different issues and saying that her silence on this contradicts, some of her previous stances.
Right. So Rogan's basically saying she's not practicing what she preaches.
Right. And you can't deny that Rogan's involvement brought a lot of attention to this case.
Oh, yeah. He's got a huge platform.
Right. So it's not just a legal story anymore.
It's become a whole pop culture phenomenon.
Exactly. And that brings us to maybe the most interesting part of this whole thing, Sonny Hostin's silence.
Right. She's usually so outspoken on The View.
Exactly. But on this issue that hits so close to home, she's been completely quiet.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. Is she trying to protect her husband? Is she worried about how this will affect her career? Or is her lawyer telling her to just keep quiet?
It's hard to say, but that silence is definitely speaking volumes.
It is, and it makes you think about how tough it must be to navigate a personal crisis when you're in the public eye like that.
Yeah, for sure. But, beyond all the drama and speculation, there's a bigger issue here.
Absolutely.
And that's the potential for profit to influence medical decisions.
Right. Are patients getting the care they need, or are some doctors putting profits ahead of patient well-being?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. And if these accusations against Dr. Hostin are true, it really makes you question how much you can trust the system.
Yeah, it's unsettling to think that some medical professionals might be taking advantage of vulnerable people.
It is. And that leads to another really important question.
Right.
How can patients protect themselves?
Right. What can we do to make sure we're getting the best possible care?
And that's something we'll definitely explore as we continue our deep dive.
Yeah, it really is unsettling to think that, somebody would put profit ahead of, taking care of a patient.
Right. And it makes you wonder, like, how can we stop this kind of thing from happening in the first place?
Right. Are there ways to, to prevent this, or is this just like a risk you take when you go to the doctor?
Well, I think there are things that we can do as a society to try and, prevent these kinds of schemes.
Okay.
But on a more individual level as patients,
right,
there are things that we can do as well to protect ourselves.
Yeah, like what can our listeners do if they're, facing a medical situation?
Yeah.
Let's say they've been in a car accident, they need treatment.
Yeah.
How can they make sure they're getting the right care?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right. Right.
Your doctor should be able to explain what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
What the treatment plan is, what the risks and benefits are of any procedure.
Yeah, that's so important. Like, it's your body.
It is. You have a right to know what's going on.
Absolutely. And you also have the right to a second opinion.
Okay.
So if you're not comfortable with what your doctor's saying, or if you just want to get another perspective,
right,
you can always go talk to another doctor.
That's good advice. But what if you really think something's not right? Like, what if you think a procedure is being recommended that you don't really need?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think if your gut is telling you something's off, you should listen to it.
Okay.
You can always document your concerns.
Yeah.
You could seek out those additional opinions that we talked about.
Right.
And if you really feel like it's necessary, You could even report your concerns to like the medical board.
Wow. So
That
you really have to be your own advocate.
you do. You have to stand up for yourself, especially when it comes to your health.
And it's okay to speak up, even if it feels a little scary.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's important, and there are resources out there to help you if you need it, like patient advocacy groups.
Right. So you're not alone.
Exactly.
Well, this case has certainly brought to light how important it is to be an informed patient.
It has. It's also made me think a lot about, the ethics of healthcare in general.
Yeah, this whole story has been like a wild ride.
It has. It's been fascinating, but it's also been kind of disturbing.
Yeah, it's been both.
But I think it's a reminder that we all need to be paying attention to what's happening in healthcare.
Absolutely.
And we need to be willing to ask tough questions.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me today.
Yeah, this was a good one.
It was definitely eye-opening, and to our listeners, thanks for joining us as always, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.